So it was like, I think summertime 2007, and we were kind of like most people, most of our cast were like home for the summer, but I used to stay in school for the summers as well, and plus I had a full-time job, and so I was working in the summers as well. And in the summer 2007, we had season 1 in the can, and I think we were gearing up for season 2, and I was writing and all that stuff. And me and him, by that time, we had decided that one of the ways that we were going to distribute our series was DVDs. So I had spent this money to get some DVDs printed up and design covers, and we had got these DVDs made, and we were trying to get these DVDs in local like CD stores on consignment. So this particular day, me and him had agreed to spend the day going around to a few stores to talk to the owners and the managers about taking a supply of our DVDs. Right? We were like giving them like 10 DVDs at a time or whatever, and then sell, the whole consignment thing. So we did spend the day doing that, right? Me and him driving around. I think we probably were, I don't know whose car we were in that day, his or mine. I guess it had to be mine, because it was probably mine, I guess. And so at the end of our day, I remember we had gotten into a conversation in the car, kind of turned to a little bit of an argument about something. I don't know what it was. It was, but it was something around like the concept of like communication and like loyalty, because some of those things that seemed like micro issues, but were like inconsistencies and patterns that I was seeing in him. When those things would come up, I was always addressing them with him, right? And in the early times of us, we didn't argue a lot. He seemed to be a lot more like agreeable and we were able to like resolve things once we actually talked, right? I did notice that he only wanted to talk things through when he was down to talk and figure things out. It did have to be on his time. It had to be when he felt like it, when he was ready. And what I learned is that when you told him what you want to talk to him about, that gave him time to put a story together, a narrative together or whatever. But anyway, so this particular day we got into this argument. We're in the car. We were finishing our day from talking to the owners and the managers of like small independent stores in Tallahassee, and we kept going with the argument, right? And it was something about like something that I found out about him from one of our other actors, about some stuff that he was working on, and I just felt like, you can tell me, like we have to have a level of like trust and transparency in order to just be able to and keep investing in each other. You know what I mean? So it's like, dude, I'm sharing with you, I'm telling you, other things that I'm doing and things that people want me to do and and I'm trying to be loyal to this partnership. I want to feel like you're doing the same thing. So it was something to that effect, right? The conversation, but he was resisting it, and it turned into an argument. So we get back to where this parking lot where his car was parked, so that we could, part ways. And I remember, the argument was starting to get heated. It was probably our first big heated argument. And I remember him getting out. We both got out of the car, and I remember him getting out of the passenger side, and he says to me, he's yelling at me. He's like, "You know what? This sounds like some boy girl shit." Right? I was very confused by that statement. I was confused and I was offended, but I wasn't sure quite which way to be offended by that statement. I was like thinking like myself, what are you trying to say with that statement? Like, why are you using that kind of statement with me, right? Like, what is that supposed to mean, really? What do you mean by that? And so I remember that was pretty much like the end of the argument for me. I don't remember much going on after that. And I remember I probably said fuck you to him or something like that, and I got in my car, pulled off, and went home, right? And I remember being so mad because I was like, what the fuck is that? So I was mad about the argument, but I was really mad about that statement, right? Because I was like, what is that supposed to mean? Like, what does that mean? This is like some boy girl shit. Like, what are you trying to say? So here we go. In my mind, I'm one of those overanalyzers. I used to have a big issue with that. And I'm asking myself, like, why would he ever put me and him in a conflict in the context of a boy-girl situation? Like, what are you trying to say? You're trying to say that you the boy and I'm the girl, and so me confronting you about something that I was concerned about, what are you trying to say? Like, I'm nagging you like how a girl would? Or like, what are you trying to say? And so I was pissed. I was so pissed. And so we had started back kind of talking probably via text, because I probably wouldn't speak to him for a couple of days or something, most likely. And I remember going about the rest of that week, and I just remember that whole week, like, I couldn't like calm down from that argument. Like, I couldn't calm down from that. I couldn't calm down from that statement. And I was so mad. I was like, I told myself, I said, you know what? This city is not even big enough for the two of us right now, And so, because I was at that time I was comfortable, financially, and so I was like, you know what? I'm taking a vacation. I need a break, right? And I said, my best friend Kesha is out in LA. I need a break. I'm gonna go out, see her in LA, and try to woo-saw, right? Because I don't even want to be in the same city as him right now, right? I was mad. And so I booked a plane ticket to LA for a weekend. And the funny thing is I had him take me to the airport. I had him take me to the airport in my car, and I let him keep my car for the weekend while I was gone, while I was in LA, because I knew that his car wasn't in great condition, and that because he had lost his job, so he wasn't driving the company car anymore. So whenever we kind of had something to do, we were taking my car because my car was newer, right? And so because I was going to be out of town, I wasn't going to use my car for the weekend. I was like, well, even though I'm mad at you, you can still use my car while I'm gone, and just take me to the airport and pick me up. I was a good friend. I was a good friend. So I go to LA, and I fly to LA mad at him still, right? So it was my first time ever. That was my first time being on a plane ever in my life. And I flew to LA, and that was my first time in California. And I had lived on the West Coast before in Las Vegas as a kid. And my dad lived out there. So I'd been to the West Coast before, but I'd never been to California. So I fly to LA. My friend Kesha picks me up from the airport, and before we even go to her house, the first thing we do is she takes me to get something. Go get something to eat, right? We have dinner. And I remember, I think we had dinner at like Planet Hollywood or something like that. And one of the first things she said to me when we sat down in the booth, right? She looks at me and she says, So you're in love with Jared. And I'm shocked because I was not expecting to hear something like that. And I'm like, what? And she's like, you flew all the way to California because you guys got into an argument. She says, you're in love with them. And I was like, what? I was like, what? I was like, what? I was like, nah, I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't think so. You think so? You know, that floored me. And it honestly is, as dramatic and corny as it sounds, it changed my life from that point forward. I was never the same after that statement. And so I spent the weekend with her and enjoying LA, introducing myself to LA, but also thinking about her take on me and him. And I was just like, is she right? Or is she tripping? Like, and so now it's like I couldn't unhear something like that, you know? And I had to now figure out, how did I feel? Like, was that how I feel? You know? Or was it something else? You know? I trusted her opinion. I thought she was a very smart girl. That's why I was happy to have her as a friend. You know, she was somebody that had a little more experience than I did. Well, she had a lot more experience than I did when it came to like romantic relationships and all that kind of stuff. So at the time, I felt like she was credible with, her opinion of what was going on with me. And so I just started to be like, okay, well, maybe something is happening here with me and him that I am not, that conscious of. And I need to be open to, exploring what that means. If it's true, if so, what does that mean moving forward for me and him? What does that mean moving forward for me? What does that mean in the context of what we're trying to do here, which we're trying to get to Hollywood, So it just made things that were already like a little bit tricky, just like a million times more, more tricky, and difficult. So I remember getting back to Tallahassee after that weekend where I got my first tattoo in LA, my first and only tattoo in LA. And I remember telling myself, like, okay, if this is true and that is my deepest feelings, about him, I was like, I don't want him to know it. I was like, I don't want to change our dynamic. I said, I'm not going to like pursue nothing with him. Like, that's not, I didn't feel like that was an option. I felt like we were already too ingrained in what we were doing. And I felt like our relationship was established already. And I wasn't going to add this component to it. But I think what I didn't realize exactly at that moment, but what I came to realize was that I think he'd already was like dabbling in that energy with me, meaning like I think that there were things that he was already doing purposely, based on whatever his objectives were with me, but I was determined to, like, if that was the truth, I was gonna try to hide it. I wasn't gonna project it. I didn't see him in that way. I didn't like, I knew he was like a handsome guy, and I knew that a lot of girls and even guys thought he was like attractive, and he had this charm that everybody loved, and everybody seemed to like love Jared. He would come around, he would kiss all the girls on the cheek. They always loved it. But I think I maybe had heard like a whisper or two that Jared might be gay or bisexual. One of our actors that I was friends with had told me that he had seen Jared coming out of somebody's house, apartment one night near campus, but I didn't know whether that was substantiated or not, and I also didn't know what that meant. But I didn't see him as that, not consciously. I didn't see, when I looked up, I wasn't like desiring him or even having those kind of thoughts. I wasn't having those kind of thoughts about anybody. Now, I was, in my personal life, I was participating in hookup culture, like I was, with dudes. But I kept it separate from my professional life. And I never saw him. Like there were other people that I, like had some crushes on and stuff, and some people in school that I had crushes on, but Jared wasn't one of those people for me. I saw him as a friend. I saw him as like almost like a brother, because he was always calling me his brother and his bro and all that. And I saw him as a business partner, And so if what Kesha said was true, I was determined to try to hide it, because I didn't want that to complicate our already somewhat complicated dynamic that I was starting to see. And I just didn't know what that was going to mean, So I just told myself, like, be extra careful that you're not projecting it just in case it's true, right? So we start working on this feature film, Victim, and we start filming it. And James Bland was helping us with it as well. He was producing it with us, and he was acting in it. And Jared's girlfriend was playing his love interest, and we were working on that and trying to make another opportunity for ourselves. And at this point in our journey and in my journey, I was tired. I had done a lot in a very short, couple years, 2 or 3 years. I was starting to experience, things like depression, which that was never something that was like actively a part of my life, but I was starting to have those moments. There was like fallouts, and there was always issues going on with the cast, and even my relationships with the cast at times, and losing actors, and there was always just this drama, and it was just starting to kind of burn me out. But I was determined to kind of just keep moving forward, with trying to build this career. And I knew that someday, it's funny because I wasn't thinking about graduation. Like I wasn't thinking about graduation at all. Like I was moving forward. I was in school every semester. My grades were starting to slip at times. Like I dropped Japanese class like twice, 2 or 3 times. Because I couldn't focus. I dropped French once or twice because I couldn't focus, and I then became a dual major. So I took on an extra major, which was political science, and I was moving forward, but I was also failing a couple classes here and there, and I had just kind of let this film life just kind of take over my whole life. I wasn't advancing socially like I probably should have at that age, especially by 2008. I was like 20, like 26, still in school, in heading into like my 6th year of school, you know, which is crazy. So I had like way more credits than I needed to, but I still didn't have like certain credits that I needed to get me out of school to graduate, and I wasn't even focusing on that, you know. So I ended up with, I was a dual major, and I had accumulated about like 4 or 5 minors in different areas, like religion, philosophy, communication, a couple other areas, plus my majors. And so then we're filming this project, and it's going okay. It's going okay. By that point, definitely, me and his dynamic was definitely a lot more complicated, you know. And now he has this girlfriend, and now I'm spending time with her and him, and she also wants to be friends with me, but I'm trying to be like, no, you're his girlfriend and you're my actress, so I don't need the friend thing, right? But she wanted to be friends with me, and she was such a great girl, you know. And so that was difficult, because I was trying not to, like, he would like want me to be around him and his girlfriend, despite the way that I came to find out about them, and despite that, me finding out that he was dating somebody created like a trust thing between me and him, or me towards him, because I was like, you were hiding it. So the question is, why did you feel the need to hide it from me? Like, who am I for you to need to hide a relationship from, or a girlfriend from me? Like, that was weird for somebody who was allegedly supposed to be a straight guy, you know. So yeah, I'm spending time with him, and he did open up a lot during this period. Like, he told me a lot about his past relationships. You know, I had found out that I found out very early, after finding out that he was dating this girl that was living with him, that he was also cheating on her. So he told me this out of his mouth, and he described the girls that he was cheating on me. He described how he was having sex with them and what he liked when it came to sex with them. And make sure I'm still in focus. Yeah, he would describe to me like how he had sex with these girls and what he liked sexually, and like he was very like he went from not ever bringing his intimate life into our friendship dynamic and our business relationship, to being very comfortable sharing a lot of that, you know. And then I'm sure I was doing the same thing, because he was now doing it, you know. And that's when I realized that he was a hoe. He was a hoe. He wasn't who he said he was the year prior, when he told me that he was celibate when we were working on our sexual health campaign for MBK. He was actually out here being a hoe. And I had big issues with that, because you know, I came from a family that had deep issues around infidelity, so that's like a trauma thing for me. And it's something that I make character judgments from people who, you know, engage in infidelity. Like, it's a big red flag for me. Even to have people in my life, that's a big red flag, because to me that says a lot about you as a character. It tells me that you have loyalty issues. It tells me you have integrity issues. And why would I want to be friends or in business partnerships with people who have loyalty and integrity issues? Like, why would I hitch my star to that? So he's opening up to me these different things about himself and his background, even more than he ever had. And I'm trying to still be a friend. We're still so enmeshed business wise. And so, you know, I think I just kind of felt stuck at that point, like stuck in in a situation, stuck filming, stuck being a producing partner to him, and everything that came with that. We'd set so many things in motion that it was hard to stop, and even stop to be able to just clear my head and process everything that was happening. It was difficult to do that. And and my trust had started going down for him, seeing how he treated that girlfriend, and then the sum of my experiences with him. I was really like, I had mostly a negative opinion of him, and it was just very different from how he presented himself originally to me. And the things that like somebody had said to me like the year prior or whatever, and they had said, oh, he's using you, those things really started to echo more in my head by that point. But again, we were stuck in a situation. We were filming a movie at that point. His girlfriend started sharing some stuff about their relationship that, gave me insight to the kind of person he was when he was away from me. And I didn't like what I heard. He was emotionally abusive to her. He was cruel. He wasn't treating her with respect because he was sleeping with all these different people, and then she found out that he was cheating, and then she talked to me about it, and she ends up telling me that the amount of people that he said he cheated with, he had told me it was even more than that. So he was lying to her. He was a liar. And so my theory has always been, if you lie to the person that you're sleeping with, that you're being intimate with, you'll lie to anybody. If you can't be a good person to your partner, the person you're choosing, even though she was unofficial, but he moved her into his house. She was living with him, and it's like, if you can't be a good person to that person, then I don't trust you to be a good person to just me as a friend, and definitely not to me as a business partner, So I was having like some moral difficulties with, my relationship with him and continuing it and what that looked like, it had kind of come to the surface that he wasn't a good guy, that he was actually kind of a terrible guy. So there was a moment where we were filming this movie project where we had like a little break. We had like a day off. And on my day off, I had went to visit a friend who he had introduced me to, a young lady that he had introduced me to maybe like a year or two prior, like 2 years prior, as an actress in the MBK project. And we worked with her, and me and her developed a great relationship. We actually became friends. And she had been, and then she ended up being my, like, kind of like my remote assistant on season 2 of MBK. So she would help me with like getting schedules from the actors and doing call sheets, and she liked doing stuff like that. And so we got really, really cool because of that, And so anyway, we had this day off from doing Victim, and she wanted to me to come by to just catch up because we hadn't been able to catch up for a while. And so I did. I planned to go, hang out with her. And then this particular day, the plan was I was gonna go hang out with her, and Jared was gonna go hang out with some friends of his, and we were supposed to link up later that night to do like a promotional photo shoot for the movie in this park at night. So that was the plan for that day. So I go over to her house, by myself, and we have a good time. We're kicking it, sitting on our couches, kicking it, catching up. I'm catching her up on all the goings on with everybody around us and the projects, and she's asking how the projects are going, how the filming of the movie is going. And she asked, there was somebody else that was supposed to play the role that we gave to his girlfriend, and she asked, what ended up happening with the one actress not taking it and the other actress taking it. I tell her, I say, we ended up, actually using Jared's girlfriend as that love interest character. And she stops and she doesn't say anything, but she gives me like a weird look, right? And then I think I had like continued talking, and then I stopped when I looked, and I was like looking at her face like, what's wrong? Like, what's wrong? And she was like, did you say he had a girlfriend? And I was like, yeah, like she lives with him, right? Why did I say that? She goes, he has a girlfriend that lives with him? I'm like, yeah. And she's like, I've been dating Jared. Like, I'm dating him. Like, what do you mean he has a girlfriend? I was just with him on Tuesday. That's what she said. And I'm like, I was confused. And then she says, I've been dating Jared for like a year. She was like, I thought you knew. I'm like, I don't know that. I don't know that. Like, he's never told me that y'all were dating and that y'all had any that was, the context of y'all's relationship, and so she's like, she's like broken, and she kind of like starts to cry, and it just made me feel so shitty. I've never seen anybody's like heartbreak in front of me, like in front of my face like that. I've never seen it. And so I was like, I felt bad for her, and she kind of explained what she said was so. And I'm like, wow. So like, here I am again, kind of being blindsided by somebody else telling me something about this guy that I should have learned from him. You know what I mean? I'm always finding out stuff about him in a roundabout way. But meanwhile, he's always, pushing me and pressuring me to share and want to learn stuff about me and what I'm doing and how I'm thinking and all that stuff. But he's not doing the same. And I was just like something like broke in me, and I was just tired of it at that point. I got angry. And I remember her telling me, I was like, I'm supposed to meet up with him tonight. I'm supposed to be on set with him tomorrow. Like I was angry, because I just got tired. Me and him were supposed to have the kind of relationship by that point where, I'm not walking into situations with people that he has even brought into my life, and he's not giving me the proper context about who these people are, and I'm sharing things, innocently, not knowing that, oh no, he's over here moving like this, and he is manipulating these people and acting like these different pieces are never going to like cross over. But he was bad at that. because I was finding stuff out, and people were finding stuff out. Like, people were crossing paths, and things about him were coming to the surface, all because of how he was out here moving. And I had kind of had it at that point. So I am sitting there with her, and I just remember her saying to me, she says, "Don't worry about me. I'll be fine. I don't want this to create an issue between you and him." I remember her saying that to me. And I remember saying, like outside of what he's done to you and how he's screwing with you, and hurting you, I was like, no, there's a real issue, like for real now between us, because I gotta make a decision if I even want somebody like this in my life, and there have been, issues along the way, so far across these. I mean, at that point, it had been about 3 years, since I've known him, and so this felt like a culmination. It felt like a point where I needed to make a decision, because I don't think I had the words at the time to describe how I was feeling, but ultimately it was, like a conflict with my values, having this person in my life. I felt like I could do bad by myself. I don't need this. I don't need him. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like he's enriched my life in ways that I couldn't have done for myself, and it's not like I'm trying to hitch myself to his star. Like, I've always been clear that it was him hitching himself to my star and what I got going and what I was trying to do. You know what I mean? And I had the feeling at that point that he was masquerading, because masquerading at doing that, because it was clear that this guy wasn't like some deep artist, and he wasn't somebody that had like a deep natural talent or a deep talent towards acting or anything creative. This was clearly somebody who was trying to get into an industry just because he liked it and wanted to be in it, for whatever deeper reasons inside him that he wanted to do that. But he wasn't my equal, he wasn't my equal. Like, he didn't have nowhere near my talent, or what I've come to accept as my genius. He didn't have anywhere near that. He was, harvesting off of mine, and I did know that at that time in 2008 when this happened. And this was actually like summer 2008, like late summer 2008, and I was a second year senior at that time in school. But yeah, she was heartbroken, and it hurt me that I inadvertently hurt her, and it just made me be like, yo, like me and him, we gotta deal with this issue. I remember texting him, and because again, we were supposed to meet up that night anyway. I was supposed to pick him up anyway that night. And so I remember texting him and telling him, like, we gotta talk, which he never used to like when I told him that. And of course he's asking, what about, and this time I'm like, no, I ain't finna tell you. Like, you gonna wait, you gonna find out when I see you, and then we'll talk. And so he didn't like that, of course, because people like him need to control the situation, you know, and they don't want to be blindsided. So, and I'd learned that about him, and I'd learned that about people like him. So I was starting to come into a certain consciousness that I hadn't had before I met him, you know. But my journey with him at that point had opened my eyes to so much, you know, and I kind of just like couldn't believe that this is where I was, you know, because I felt like even though we had made progress in this like entertainment career we were trying to get off the ground, you know, we had met Spike Lee, we had had some other victories, right? But I just felt like I was kind of, maybe in a personal sense, I feel like I was kind of far from where I ever thought I'd be, you know, and it was due to me tethering myself to this person, you know. And so anyway, I left her, gave her a hug, left her, told her I would check on her later. And she told me again, she's like, I don't want you guys to fight, you know. I think she was thinking fight. She didn't want us to fight, but she didn't want us to fight over him, what he did to her. But I just had to tell her, you know, that's not the only issue that I'm gonna have to address, you know, with him. Like there's an issue with us that we've been not fully confronting. So I left, and he sent me the address to where he was, and I drove over to pick him up from his friend's house, and we drove over to a park in Tallahassee. Let me see if I can think of the name of it. I don't remember the name of it, but I know that it was, what was it, off of Thomasville Road. It's a park that we had previously done several photo shoots for MBK, so it was like a common park that we used. And I remember we drove up to the park. It was completely dark. This is like about 9 at night, and I pulled into a parking space, and there's no cars there. The park is completely empty, and we both get out the car, right? And of course, he's wanting to see what I wanted to talk about, right? So I go into recounting the night's events with the young lady, right? And he's like listening silently, and I take him through the whole story. And you know, I get to the end, and that's when he was like, it was settling in. I remember seeing him like nod at seeing kind of, I guess, where I was going, right? And I just remember saying to him, I was like, you know,